March 14, year 19, the Sovereign's Court held its first hearing under the Convergence preparation calendar as operational law. Not draft. Not committee recommendation. Law, the kind that arrived in bound copies with numbered margins, signature pages, and a chancellor's seal that meant clerks in 6 kingdoms would copy it whether they understood resonance or not. Seraphine had written the calendar in February on a desk in Gareth, while Kael's anchor settled into sustained hum through stone and relay, and the particular stubbornness of institutions that required paper before they believed in frequency. By March, she had translated it into docket language, quarterly field health audits, seam calibration windows, inter-kingdom obligation schedules, academy review cycles, demon autonomy verification intervals. Blank columns for events no institution could predict, and every institution would pretend it had. The blank columns were not weakness. They were the most honest pages in the document. Kael arrived at Valdris Hour 7 with 3 field bulletins drafted and 1 sentence he and Seraphine had argued about for 11 minutes in February, still unresolved in his pocket. The court chamber smelled of new ink, old stone, and spring rain that had not yet decided whether to commit to the season. Delegates filled the tiered benches, Valdris legal scholars with Reform Council posture, Soulhaven Consul proxies with ledger eyes, Hareth Southern Silk folded with military practicality. Thornwald's Eastern delegate with weather in her coat, regardless of Valdris climate. Demon Peace faction observers sat in the autonomy section Beth had negotiated 12 months prior, visible, documented, not ornamental. King Kaelin occupied the founding signatory chair without performing kingship. He had learned, over 5 years of war and 2 years of peace, that presence was sometimes the entire contribution. Seraphine entered from the Chancellor's door with document stack aligned to millimeter tolerance and expression settled 2 seconds before the rest of her face completed the journey from corridor fatigue to session readiness. She did not look at Kael when she passed the advisor's chair. She did not need to. The marriage grammar had moved into governance grammar, proximity without announcement, division of labor without ceremony. She said, "This session opens under calendar year 19, Article 1. The Convergence preparation schedule is binding on all signatory parties and consultative parties as defined in the Peace Treaty Annex." First agenda item. Ironmark Northern Seam Calibration Dispute, Docket IC 19-003. The room exhaled the way rooms exhaled when something that had been theoretical became furniture. The Ironmark dispute was not glamorous. It was a disagreement about measurement intervals along the northern flank relay corridor, whether calibration teams could access a 12-mile stretch during Thornwald's spring storm window without violating Confederation weather protocols. A shooting incident in year 14. A scheduling argument in year 19. Progress measured in the downgrade of problems. Kael spoke when Seraphine turned to him, not before. The northern flank field indices improved 11% since February anchor stabilization, he said. Ironmark's proposed interval is compatible with Thornwald's storm window if teams enter from the eastern approach and limit overnight camp to the relay station at Marker 7. Marker 7 seam density is within portable gauge tolerance. I have the arithmetic. He placed the bulletin on the record table. Seraphine said, "The court accepts the eastern approach. Ironmark's interval stands. Thornwald receives 48 hours notice before team entry." Next item. 40 minutes of seam calibrations, funding deferrals, academy module review dates, demon scholarly access to tomb lower galleries for comparative resonance texts. No one declared victory. No one drew swords. A clerk copied field health indices without knowing his ink was being verified against a living reference 300 miles south in Gareth. Where Kael's anchor hummed sustained through walls he was not currently standing inside because institutions required his body in Valdris and his frequency everywhere. The hum was not loud. It was persistent, the way good architecture was persistent, holding weight without announcing that it held weight. Lunch was 22 minutes. Seraphine ate standing at the Chancellor's side table reviewing the afternoon docket. Kael ate sitting on the chamber steps because the advisor's chair had become a target for delegates who wanted policy answers he was not authorized to give. A Soulhaven merchant proxy asked whether the anchor could guarantee trade corridor stability percentages. Kael said, The anchor offers alignment. Trade corridors remain trade corridors. Stability requires maintenance, which the calendar schedules. I advise on field mechanics. The Chancellor advises on everything else. The proxy left dissatisfied and educated, which was often the same thing. Afternoon brought the calendar's first formal ratification vote, not on the calendar itself, already law, but on the enforcement mechanism, court audit authority over missed obligations, graduated penalties, appeal pathways, demon autonomy consultation before any seam action in faction-adjacent zones. Harn's proxy, a woman named Eska Vorn with Ironmark formal coat and the expression of someone reading sentences she had not written, delivered a prepared acknowledgement of Clause 7 jurisdiction and departed before questions. Harn's grammar for participation without comfort. Seraphine let her go without comment. She had learned that forcing speech from people who communicated through seals and departures produced performance, not agreement. The vote passed with abstentions from 2 merchant delegations and 1 Thornwald Council observer who wanted home consultation before committing weather corridors to continental schedule. Seraphine scheduled the Thornwald consultation for April. She did not treat abstention as defeat. She treated it as process. Kael wrote the second field bulletin at hour 16 in the archive annex, while relay birds waited in wicker cages by the window. March 14th Field Health Summary. Northern Flank 11 Stability Index since February anchor completion. Valdris Central seam nominal. Solhaven Coastal Corridor minor fluctuation within pre-war baseline. Hareth Southern Zones. Demon Peace Faction reports cooperative verification. Ironmark Relay Marker 7 suitable for overnight calibration camp per portable gauge standard. Anchor resonance sustained. No distortion events logged. Seraphine edited one sentence. Minor fluctuation became fluctuation within documented baseline and returned the page without looking up from the enforcement addendum she was annotating. Accuracy over victory. Always. Night March 14th year 19, they worked in the court residential wing with the particular exhaustion of people who had won something that did not feel like winning because winning in institutions felt like furniture assembly with missing screws and no diagram. The calendar lay open on the desk, year 20 through year 29 marked in Seraphine's hand. Hearings and calibrations and convergence milestones. Blank space where life would insert problems. Kael's anchor hummed through the building the way it hummed through everything now, not invasion, connection. He could feel Thornwald's Eastern Ridge teams finishing a routine seam check. He could feel Aldric in the barony study rubbing his left wrist where old injury ached less. He could feel the weight of listening at scale and had stopped dramatizing the cost because dramatizing cost was a luxury institutions could not afford. Seraphine set down her pen. She said, "Kaelin wants the briefing summary by morning." He said, "It will be ready." She said, "The Thornwald consultation will require travel." He said, "Yes." Pause. She said, "We built this." He said, "We're building it." She looked at the calendar, 10 years to convergence, 10 years of hearings and calibrations and arguments about who paid for portable gauges and whether demon autonomy meant consultation or veto. Not saved. Defended. Operational. She did not smile. She reorganized her document stack. He joined her at the desk for the third bulletin, Kaelin's summary. Shorter, political vocabulary trimmed to what a king could say without expansion rhetoric. Outside, spring rain began soft, field welcome, calibration friendly. The court had held its first hearing under the calendar as law. The anchor hummed sustained. The world was not quieter. It was more coherent by degrees too small to celebrate and too large to ignore. Hour 22, they stopped because stopping was also schedule. Seraphine's hand stilled on the final page the way it stilled when she decided something, signature placement, enforcement date, the particular angle of a margin note that would save a clerk 6 minutes of confusion 6 months from now. Kael closed the ledger he kept in the archive office duplicate. March 14th, calendar operational law. First hearing complete. Ironmark seam dispute resolved, Eastern approach. Enforcement mechanism ratified. Field bulletins dispatched. Anchor sustained. Ordinary victory. Ordinary trusted. She said, "Tomorrow the seam teams deploy." He said, "Yes." She said, "And the day after?" He said, "Yes." She leaned her shoulder half an inch from his marriage grammar, partnership visible in function, not labeled sufficient. Building was the work. They were exhausted. They were satisfied in the way people were satisfied when the thing they had built held weight on the first day it was asked to hold weight, not triumph, confirmation. The convergence was 10 years away. The calendar lived. That was enough for March 14th, year 19. Enough for a long while. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. Work continued. April 8th, year 19. Baron Aldric Ashford arrived at Gareth by overland carriage with 2 guards he did not need and a coat brushed for the first time since the wedding. Kael met him at the tomb approach, not in armor, not with sword, in the plain field coat he wore for archive work and calibration reviews. The spring wind off the old capital's stone carried dust, and the faint mineral smell of relay stations being rebuilt where coalition banners had stood 2 years prior. Aldric stepped down from the carriage slowly. Old injury in the left wrist. Old habit of measuring his son by whether the sun looked like someone who could survive winter. He looked at Kael and did not find a soldier. He found something else, a man standing with the particular stillness of someone who was listening to a room larger than the room his body occupied. Aldric said, "You're thinner." Kael said, "The court feeds delegates. It does not feed advisors." Aldric looked at the tomb entrance, ancient stone, scholar wagons, calibration teams with portable gauges, and the tired competence of people doing maintenance on a world that had nearly broken. He said, "Your mother would have wanted to see this." Kael said, "I know. Not poetry. Enough." The tomb tour was not a tour of victories. This showed Aldric the medical annex where field surgeons trained on resonance-adjacent trauma, burns that were not fire, exhaustion that was not sleep debt, the new grammar of injury that came from living inside a field learning coherence. Demon scholars in the lower galleries nodded to the Baron with the careful courtesy of a faction that had spent 300 years being studied and was now, provisionally, studying back. Aldric asked practical questions because practical questions were how frontier barons loved their children without saying the word. How did the archive stay dry? Who paid the lamp oil? Did the calibration team sleep enough? Kael answered with arithmetic where arithmetic applied and silence where silence was more honest. The central chamber came last. The bench thus had padded with unacceptable color. The diagrams Kael had read before he had vocabulary for what he recognized. The place where an emperor had fallen and an anchor had risen. Aldric stood in the doorway a long moment. His hands were visible. Frontier honesty. He said, "I read your letter." Kael said, "I'm well." Aldric said, "That was the whole letter." Kael said, "You don't need poetry from me." Aldric's mouth moved, not quite smile, something older and more fragile. He said, "I needed you alive." The letter helped. They sent the attendants away. Father and son in the chamber with lamp low and wind in archive corridors and the sustained hum of anchor resonance that Aldric could not hear as frequency, but could feel as steadiness in his bones the way his wrist ached less for no medical reason he would accept. Aldric sat on the padded bench because climbing mattered now and pride mattered less. Kael sat beside him. Not soldier and commander. Not barren air and expectation. 2 people in a room where one of them had become something the world had not contained in 300 years, and the other had spent 23 years loving a child he could not fully see. Aldric said, "I spent years watching you train. Maps. Swords. Supply lines. I thought if you were strong enough, fast enough, clever enough, the story would not take you." Kael said, "The story was wrong about a lot of things." Aldric said, "I know that now. I didn't know it then." Pause. The wind moved through stone. Aldric said, "I never understood what you were building. I understood baronies. Alliances. I understood men with swords. I did not understand this." He gestured, not at the chamber, at the hum, at the field, at the son who was not a soldier and had never needed to be one for the work to matter. Kael said, "You never needed to understand." Aldric looked at him. Kael said, "You needed to trust me. You did that before you had reasons." The reasons came later. Aldric cried. Openly. Without embarrassment. Frontier honesty. Love without political instinct for indirection. The same man who had cried at the wedding before the ceremony started, and had not apologized for it. Tears on a face lined by weather and worry and the particular exhaustion of fathers who had sent sons toward dangers they could not follow. Kael did not perform comfort. He stayed. He let his shoulder rest half an inch from his father's. Proximity grammar learned late. Family version sufficient. Aldric wiped his face with the back of his hand the way frontier men wiped their faces when crying was not weakness, but weather. He said, "Your mother would have understood faster than me." Kael said, "She would have argued with Seraphine about calendar margins. You would have brought them tea." Aldric made a sound that might have been laughter if laughter had less water in it. He said, "Probably." Seraphine found them hour 19 in the archive office, not intruding, arriving with purpose and tea because Seraphine's care appeared in action rather than expression. Aldric stood when she entered. Old courtesy. New gravity. He looked at her the way he had looked at her at the wedding wine table, measuring whether his son had found someone who could keep up with him, finding again that the answer was yes, and that yes meant something larger than tactical compatibility. He said, "Chancellor." She said, "Aldric." He said, "I was hoping at the wedding I said." He stopped. Started again. "I was hoping he'd find someone who could keep up with him." She said, "He can barely keep up with me." Aldric said, "I know. That's why it works." Kael stood 6 feet away reviewing a field health summary he had already reviewed twice, because joining would have been performance and because hearing the exchange twice did not make it less true. Aldric turned to Seraphine with the directness of a man who had run out of indirection sometime in the central chamber. He said, "I didn't have a daughter. I have one now. If you'll have it." Seraphine's hands stilled the way they stilled when she decided something. She said, "I will." One word. Enough. Aldric nodded. He did not hug her. Hugging would have been performance for all three of them. He poured her tea instead, wrong pot, right intention, and the gesture carried what frontier families carried when words had already spent themselves in the chamber below. Night April 8th year 19, Aldric slept in guest quarters thus, had prepared with medical practicality, low bed, lamp within reach, window cracked for air that frontier lungs trusted. Kael walked the tomb perimeter because anchors who listened at scale still needed their bodies to move or the listening became drowning. The field was quieter than February. Not silent. Coherent by degrees. Thornwald Storm Corridor Study. Ironmark Northern Relay Holding. Soulhaven Coastal Fluctuation within baseline. The world damaged and diverse and complicated. Worth protecting. He thought of Aldric crying without embarrassment and did not dramatize the weight. Weight settled the way weight settled, into tea poured wrong, into a letter that said I'm well, into a father who had trusted before he understood and had come to Gareth anyway. Morning April 9th, Aldric departed for Ashford. He stood at the carriage with guards waiting and Spring Road open and the tomb behind him like a fact he could not have imagined at his son's awakening ceremony when the core was declared fractured and defective and his face went carefully blank. He said, "Hold whatever it is you're holding." Kael said, "Yes." Aldric said, "Come visit the barony before harvest." Not for strategy. For dinner. Kael said, "Yes." Aldric looked at Seraphine. He said, "Both of you." She said, "We'll check the calendar." Aldric climbed into the carriage with the slow care of a man whose body had opinions about stairs and distances, and who had decided pride was less important than showing up. He did not wave from the window. Frontier barons did not wave. He nodded once. Kael nodded back. Enough. The carriage disappeared down the Gareth approach road toward frontier hills and irrigation projects and the barony that had been the first territory on a map that was no longer pins but frequency. Kael returned to the archive office. Seraphine was already at the desk. He said, "He's proud." She said, "He came." He said, "Yes." She said, "That matters more." He updated the ledger. April 8th to 9th. Aldric first visit Gareth/tomb. Central chamber. Father understood anchor not soldier, late sufficient. Daughter acknowledgement Seraphine. Returned Ashford proud. Ordinary family victory. Ordinary trusted. The anchor hummed sustained. Building continued. Same hands. Less red. A father who had cried without embarrassment and had meant every tear. Enough for April 9th year 19. Enough for a long while. May 3rd, year 19, Gareth arrived at Gareth by carriage because stairs had become negotiation and horses had not. Kael met him at the tomb archive entrance with the particular attention he paid to people who had taught him to read terrain before he could read resonance, gruff, economical. Alive in the way old soldiers were alive when they had stopped wasting time on unnecessary speech. Gareth looked older than February. Not diminished. Consolidated, the body choosing which battles to fight and surrendering the rest without ceremony. He said, less poetry. Kael said, yes. Gareth said, good. Show me the archive. The tomb archive had changed since Gareth last climbed these stairs, which he had not done, which was the point of May 3rd, which was the point of many things Gareth no longer did and had not died from not doing. Scholar wagons outside. Calibration teams in corridors. Demon Peace faction researchers in lower galleries with autonomy protocols visible on clipboards. The archive itself remained stone and lamp and the smell of old paper that frontier men trusted more than marble. Gareth moved slowly and observed quickly the same ratio he had maintained for 40 years. He said, you've put the defense geometry in the wrong drawer. Kael said, thus moved medical adjacent materials to the left annex. Defense geometry followed traffic patterns. Gareth said, traffic patterns are not taxonomy. Kael said, thus wins arguments with casualties. Gareth made a sound that might have been approval if approval were not sentimental. He sat in the chair Kael had placed by the map table, low back, arms reachable, no stairs required between chair and necessary surfaces. Done climbing stairs. Done was not dead. The advisory packet was thick. Gareth had spent winter at the map he could still read without climbing frontier defense geometry compiled for academy distribution, corridor vulnerability assessments updated for post-war seam realities, watch rotation mathematics for relay stations that had been emergency fortifications and were now permanent infrastructure. 40 years of reading terrain compressed into something students could argue with. He placed it on the table with the care of a man delivering a last load rather than a last breath. He said, Academy gets the geometry. Court gets the corridor updates. You get the rest. Kael said, the rest. Gareth slid a thinner folder, personal, not institutional, the kind of paper that did not belong in duplicate archives. Inside, a hand-drawn map of the frontier barony's eastern approaches with 3 valleys marked in pencil notation Gareth's hand had used since before Kael was born. Air thin wrong here. Wind lies here. Good camp, bad seam, marker 7 before it had a marker. And a note in Gareth's block script, 4 words. Hold the map. Kael read it twice. He said, February. Gareth said, still true. Kael said, the map isn't pins anymore. Gareth said, then hold the frequency. Same job. Different medium. They worked through the geometry packet for 2 hours, Kael asking clarifying questions, Gareth answering with the minimum syllables required for accuracy. A ridgeline that looked defensible and wasn't. A river ford that looked seasonal and wasn't. The particular lie of thorn-walled storm corridors where weather and seam instability wore the same face until you learned to tell them apart, by which one made soldiers swear more. Gareth's knowledge was not mystical. It was accumulated attention, the kind that came from walking ground repeatedly until ground told you its habits. Kael said, the Academy module will need your name on the attribution page. Gareth said, no. Kael said, Damien will put it there anyway. Gareth said, Damien is earnest. Earnest people do foolish things. Tell him no. Kael said, I'll tell him you'll haunt the archive. Gareth said, I haunt better things than archives. Pause. The lamp flickered. Wind in corridors. Gareth said, I'm not dying. Kael said, I didn't ask. Gareth said, you were thinking it. Kael said, I was thinking you're tired. Gareth said, tired is not dead. Tired is done with stairs. Done with winter campaigns. Done with carrying packs up ridges I already mapped. He tapped the packet. Not done with this. Not done with you being adequate at something difficult. Kael said, high praise. Gareth's mouth moved, not quite smile, mentor equivalent of acknowledgement. Lunch was bread, cheese, and water because Gareth had never trusted ceremony to feed anyone. They ate by the map table with the frontier geometry spread between them like a conversation that had lasted 15 years and was now being passed forward. Gareth said, Aldric came. Kael said, yes. Gareth said, cried. Kael said, yes. Gareth said, good. Men who don't cry build bad maps. Kael said, that's not in the Academy module. Gareth said, nothing true is in Academy modules yet. That's why Damien exists. Afternoon brought Thess to check Gareth's blood pressure with the medical practicality that ignored rank and age and gruffness equally. Gareth endured it with the expression of a man enduring useful weather. Thess said, you're stable. Stop pretending stairs are a moral failure. Gareth said, stairs are an engineering failure. Thess said, you're 71. Gareth said, I'm 71 and correct. Kael stood by the archive window watching calibration teams report improved indices on the Gareth Southern approach, the ordinary music of a world being maintained rather than conquered. His anchor hummed sustained through stone, through Gareth's steady pulse in the chair, through 40 years of loyalty that had never been declared in sentiment and had always been shown by staying. The personal note required no translation. Hold the map. February's reply from a man who could still read terrain without climbing to it. May's delivery from a man who had compiled his remaining climbs into paper so the next generation could argue with valleys he would not walk again. Not abandonment. Transfer. Mentor closure without killing the mentor, the rarest victory this story had learned to value. Kael said, you'll stay in Ashford through summer? Gareth said, I'll stay where the chair is and the map is legible. Kael said, the court residential wing has a ground floor room. Gareth said, Valdris has too many delegates. Kael said, Gareth has scholars. Gareth said, Gareth has you being adequate at something difficult. That's worse than delegates. Kael said, there's a ground floor room. Gareth said, I'll think about it. Which meant yes in Gareth grammar. Night May 3rd year 19. Gareth slept in guest quarters. Thess had prepared, ground floor, lamp low, map copy on the bedside table because some people slept better with terrain in reach. Kael updated the master ledger in the archive office. May 3rd, Gareth delivered final advisory packet, frontier defense geometry for Academy, corridor updates for court, personal map and note. Hold the map. Done climbing stairs, done not dead. Ground floor room offered, accepted in Gareth grammar. He looked at the forward note again. The map was frequency now. Frequency required holding. Gareth had held it when it was pins and ridges and the particular lie of wind in valleys that looked safe. Kael would hold it as reference and alignment and 10 years of calendar law and seam calibrations and blank columns for problems no institution could predict. Same job. Different medium. Morning May 4th. Gareth departed for the frontier barony by carriage, not toward death, toward a chair and a map and Aldric's dinner table and the slow work of being alive without climbing stairs. He said at the carriage, less poetry. Kael said, yes. Gareth said, hold the map. Kael said, yes. Gareth climbed in with care. He did not look back. Loyalty shown by staying had become loyalty shown by leaving useful things behind and continuing to breathe. Kael watched the carriage until it turned onto the overland road. The anchor hummed sustained. The archive held geometry in the correct drawer after Thess lost the argument about traffic patterns. The world was not saved. It was defended by people who had mapped it honestly and passed the maps forward. Enough for May 4th year 19. Enough for a long while. Same hands. Less red. More blue. A mentor alive and tired and correct. Building continued. June 12th year 19. The Sovereign's Court convened for its first major dispute session since the calendar became operational law, docket SC 19-017. A territorial and seam access conflict between a Gareth Southern Lord and a Demon Peace faction autonomous zone that would have become a border war in year 15 and had become, in year 19, a 3-day hearing with translators, field surveys, and vets sitting in the autonomy section with human language speech flawless and patience measured in centuries. Kael took the advisor's chair with no vote and no title. He had learned the posture, present, precise, silent until asked. Seraphine took the Chancellor's seat with document stack aligned and expression settled 2 seconds before the rest of her face completed the journey from corridor assessment to session authority. The chamber smelled of summer heat held at bay by stone, ink, and the particular tension of delegates who had come to watch whether peace institutions could do the one thing peace required: resolve disagreement without blood. King Kaelin attended as founding signatory, accountable, not performing. Marshal Emperor Harm arrived in person for the first time since the wedding, Ironmark formal coat, expression suggesting he was enduring useful weather, staying his speech. Demon Peace faction observers filled the autonomy section. Soulhaven, Thornwald, Baldrus legal scholars at benches. Merchant proxies with ledger eyes and abstention ready if arithmetic disappointed them. The coalition sat. The dispute was not simple and was not designed to be simple. Harith, the Southern Lord, claimed historical grazing rights across a seam corridor that post-war autonomy protocols had placed under Demon Peace faction administration with verification requirements the Lord's family had not signed because signing meant acknowledging demon sovereignty in territory their grandfather had called contested and their father had called ours and year 19 called documented. The demon faction claimed the corridor's field instability made human grazing a calibration risk. Both claims contained truth. Both claims contained appetite. The court's job was not to pick a winner. The court's job was to produce a resolution that held without swords. Seraphine said, "This session addresses SC 19-017 under Calendar Article 4. Seam-adjacent disputes require field verification before territorial determination. Advisor Ashford will present field survey results. Autonomy Representative Veth will present faction verification data. Harith delegate will present historical use documentation. The court will not rule on dignity. The court will rule on measurable field integrity and enforceable access schedules." No one applauded. Good institutions did not require applause. Kael spoke when she turned to him. Only then. The joint survey team measured seam density across the disputed corridor June 1st through June 9th, he said. Portable gauge standard at 40-foot anchor distance. Results: Eastern third stable within pre-war baseline, Central third fluctuation pattern consistent with documented post-fragmentation micro-instability, Western third cooperative stabilization under demon autonomy maintenance protocols. Human grazing in the Eastern third is field compatible with quarterly calibration windows. Central third requires shared maintenance schedule. Western third is not compatible with unmanaged herd density. Arithmetic, not policy. He placed the survey bulletin on the record table. Harn read it without comment. His staying was still speech. Veth presented autonomy verification data, demon scholarly methodology translated into court-acceptable measurement language. 300 years of records compressed into graphs that showed the corridor's field had improved 9% under faction maintenance since the peace treaty signing. He did not gloat. Gloating was human grammar. He said, "Autonomy verification succeeds when measurement matches maintenance. We maintain. We measure. We invite verification. This is the treaty." Seraphine said, "The court acknowledges verification success for the Western and Central thirds pending ongoing audit schedule." The Harith Lord's delegate stood, Southern silk, military practicality, anger held with professional care. He said, "My lord's family grazed that land when the kingdom called it kingdom land." Seraphine said, "The kingdom signed the peace treaty. The treaty calls it documented. The court rules on field integrity and enforceable schedules. Not grandfather's maps. Devastating precision. Not cruelty. Precision." The morning broke for lunch without resolution. Delegates murmured the way delegates murmured when they discovered institutions might actually function. Kael ate on the chamber steps again. Lyra found him there, Thornwald blue, storm in her coat, young adult now in the way young adults were when war had accelerated their adulthood without asking permission. She said, "Harn stayed." Kael said, "Yes." She said, "That's terrifying." Kael said, "That's agreement in Ironmark grammar." She left for the Thornwald bench looking like someone calculating family politics and weather corridors simultaneously. Afternoon brought argument. The Harith delegate proposed split sovereignty, human grazing rights, in exchange for tariff concessions demon factions did not want and could not eat. Veth proposed phased access with field monitors stationed at shared cost. Tauren, representing merchant logistics, proposed a trade corridor easement that solved nothing about grazing and everything about who moved goods through the Central Third without paying Three Kingdoms twice. Seraphine listened without softening. She asked questions that removed performance from answers. She redirected speeches that wanted dignity back towards schedules that could be enforced. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When the Harith delegate attempted to invoke royal prerogative, Kaelin said one sentence: "I signed the treaty. The court enforces what I signed." Accountable kingship. Not expansion rhetoric. Harn said nothing. Harn's nothing was louder than speech from lesser delegates. Kael spoke twice more in the afternoon. Both times when asked. Both times arithmetic. Shared maintenance cost splits proportionally by field benefit indices. Eastern Third Harith 70%, Central Third 50-50, Western Third Demon Faction 80% with court audit. Quarterly calibration windows align with Thornwald Storm Data Seraphine's calendar already scheduled: June, September, December, March. Herd movement restricted 48 hours before each window. Numbers. Not dominance. Alignment offered, not imposed. His anchor hummed sustained through the chamber walls, reference frequency, not overwhelm, and delegates who had come expecting domain politics found instead a man who spoke like a surveyor and sat down when the survey was delivered. The ruling took form at hour 17. Seraphine read it aloud without notes. Eastern Third, managed grazing rights under court audit, quarterly calibration compliance, demon faction consultation 48 hours before herd movement across central boundary. Central Third, shared maintenance schedule, joint field monitors, cost split per advisor arithmetic. Western Third, demon autonomy zone confirmed, verification success recorded, human access limited to documented trade corridor easement. Tauren had negotiated into something enforceable rather than exploitative. Appeals pathway, 30 days, field evidence required, dignity speeches discouraged. Penalties for violation, graduated, beginning with seam calibration suspension and ending with court enforcement teams neither side wanted to test. The Harith delegate requested recess to consult his lord. Seraphine granted 90 minutes. He returned. He signed. Not happily. Enforceably. Veth approached Kael at session's end. Not human toast ritual. Demon peace faction grammar of acknowledgement. He said, "Autonomy verification succeeds in public." "That is new." Kael said, "It was always succeeding. No one was measuring." Veth said, "The court is annoying about measurement." Kael said, "Yes." Veth's mouth moved, not quite smile. He said, "She is formidable." Kael said, "Yes." Veth said, "You are adequate." Kael said, "High praise." Harn departed without congratulating anyone. He left a signed Ironmark seam cooperation addendum on the record table, ink dry, seal intact. Grammar for I acknowledge this when acknowledgement could not be spoken without discomfort. Seraphine filed it before the chamber cleared. Kael saw her file it. The coalition had sat. The dispute had resolved without war. Demon autonomy verification had succeeded in public measurement. Quiet political triumph, the kind that did not make songs because songs required villains, and year 19's victory was institutions functioning on a Tuesday in June. Night June 12th year 19, Kael and Seraphine in the residential wing with summer heat softening outside and documents spread inside. She said, "Harn signed." He said, "He left a seal." Same thing. She said, "The Harith Lord will complain for 6 months." He said, "The schedule will hold." She said, "Veth said verification succeeds." He said, "It does. We measured." Pause. She said, "You spoke 3 times." He said, "You spoke 300. She said, "Different jobs." He said, "Yes." She reorganized her document stack. He wrote the field bulletin summary, June 12th SC 19-017 resolved. Autonomy verification public success. Coalition enforcement precedent established. Anchor sustained. Ordinary political victory. Ordinary trusted. The Convergence was 10 years away. The court had proven it could govern peacetime crisis without battlefield justification. Not saved. Defended. Worth governing. He updated the ledger before sleep. June 12th, first major dispute resolved without war. Demon autonomy verification succeeds. Harn seal acknowledgement. Kael spoke when asked, arithmetic only. Seraphine ruling enforceable. She was already drafting the next docket. He joined her at the desk. Partnership visible in function. Not labeled. Sufficient. The coalition had sat. The world had watched. The resolution held. Enough for June 12th, year 19. Enough for a long while. Same hands. Less red. More blue. Work continued. August 22nd, year 19, Lyra Stormwind was appointed Thornwald Field Liaison to the Sovereign's Court Calibration Team's formal commission, Storm Corps insignia on Thornwald Blue. Authority to coordinate Eastern Ridge seam access with the particular vocabulary of someone who had been insulting weather accurately since before the court existed. Kael attended the signing ceremony because Lyra had asked and because asking was Lyra grammar and Lyra grammar deserved showing up. The court chamber was half full. Summer session recess meant fewer delegates and more work getting done in corridors instead of benches. Seraphine presided with Chancellor's seal and the expression that meant the appointment had already been decided in closed session and public ceremony was documentation, not debate. Lyra stood with braid neat for once and the restless energy of a young adult who had grown up in war's acceleration and was now being handed peacetime responsibility without apology. Lady Alice Stormwind, Lyra's aunt, Thornwald's senior delegate, sat in the Confederation section with weather in her coat and assessment in her eyes. Damien sat in the Academy Observer row with honest history curriculum modules in an inner pocket because Damien did not trust days without useful paper. Seraphine read the commission aloud. Thornwald Field Liaison, coordinate Eastern Ridge calibration access per calendar Article 2, report field anomalies to Court Advisor Channel, maintain Confederation weather protocol compliance, speak with authority equal to written schedule enforcement. Lyra said, I accept. 2 words. No performance. She signed. Alice did not stand. Alice's staying was conditional approval. The Thornwald grammar Seraphine had learned to read without offense. The ceremony was brief. No unity sermons. No expansion metaphors. Commander Bright sent a note from Silverlight for rooms that need honest light, attached to a portable gauge calibration kit Lyra would actually use. Torrin sent corridor tools in a crate marked complaint enclosed because Torrin's love language was logistics and annoyance in equal measure. Lyra laughed at the crate label the way she laughed at things that were ridiculous and true simultaneously. Kael stood at the chamber rail after signatures with the particular stillness of a man watching the next generation step into load-bearing roles. Lyra found him. She said, You look like someone's father. He said, I'm someone's husband. That's worse. She said, Seraphine would agree. He said, She already did. Lyra's mouth moved, immediate warmth, uncomplicated honesty. The reader's access point to the version of Kael that existed when he was not performing. She said, Eastern Ridge teams deploy September. I'll send honest reports. Not court poetry. Kael said, Good. She said, Damien has something for you too. He made me wait until after the commission so he wouldn't steal my morning. Damien approached with earnest kindness the world had tried to exploit and had not yet extinguished, gold aura stable, public-facing now, the boy who had been handed a version of goodness that served someone else's agenda and had chosen a different version anyway. He said, The Academy published the Honest History curriculum module this morning. Pre-fragmentation governance, order infiltration cases, convergence preparation context without alarmism. Commander Bright reviewed the Silverlight sections. Veth reviewed the Demon Faction sections. Mar reviewed the archive citations. He handed Kael a bound copy. Dedication page blank. Damien understood some dedications required handwriting, not printing. Kael said, You put Gareth's geometry in the defense appendix. Damien said, He said no. Kael said, He'll haunt the archive. Damien said, That's what Lyra said you'd say. They stood in the archive annex hour 15, Kael, Lyra, Damien, with summer light through high windows and calibration teams moving in corridors beyond, and the sustained hum of anchor resonance through stone. Lyra flipped through the curriculum module with storm core practicality. She said, "You wrote the Convergence section." Damien said, "I wrote what happened. Not what the novel said would happen." Pause. The word novel did not belong in court chambers. It belonged here, between three people who had lived inside a story that was wrong and were now writing the correction into academy classrooms. Kael said, "Students will argue with it." Damien said, "Good. Honest history requires argument." Lyra said, "I'll argue with the weather section. Thornwald's storm data is wrong in paragraph 12. Damien said, "Send corrections." Lyra said, "I intend to." Kael watched them argue about paragraph 12 with the affection he did not perform and the precision he always performed. Lyra loud where he was quiet. Damien earnest where he was strategic. Young adults stepping up, not into a shadow, into adjacent work that required different virtues. Field liaison. Honest history. The world worth protecting did not need one anchor and one chancellor forever. It needed people who showed up after the commission ceremony and sent corrections to paragraph 12. He thought of Ethan Cole without dramatizing the thought. 32 years planning other people's battles. Careful loneliness. A car crash and a stolen breath and a second life in a body that was supposed to die at 16. Ethan had not wanted glory. Ethan had wanted, without ever saying it cleanly, a world that made sense to protect. Not a novel's world. A real one. Damaged and diverse and complicated. This was it beginning. Not finished. Beginning. Lyra signing a commission with Storm Corps insignia. Damien publishing history that would make students uncomfortable in productive ways. Calibration teams deploying in September. Blank columns in Seraphine's calendar waiting for problems no institution could predict. The Convergence 10 years away. The anchor humming sustained. Lives worth living in the intervals between crises. Seraphine found him hour 17 in the archive office reviewing the curriculum module's Convergence section with the editorial eye she applied to everything that entered court record. She said, "Lyra will send 6 pages of weather corrections by tomorrow." Kael said, "Yes." She said, "Damien will accept 4. Kael said, "Yes." She said, "You're thinking about something adjacent." He said, "Previous life." She did not ask him to elaborate. She reorganized her document stack, commission copy filed, September deployment schedule annotated, Thornwald consultation cross-referenced. Partnership grammar. She said, "Is it worth it?" He said, "Yes." 1 word. Enough. Night August 22nd year 19, relay birds departed with field bulletins and curriculum distribution lists and Lyra's first liaison report draft, Eastern Ridge Stable, paragraph 12 wrong, commission accepted, teams ready. Kael updated the master ledger. August 22nd, Lyra appointed Thornwald field liaison to court calibration teams. Damien Honest History Curriculum Module published, Academy distribution. Young generation stepping up. Ethan Cole, world worth protecting, beginning not finished. He closed the ledger. Some entries belonged only in the place where maps changed without announcing themselves. Outside, summer heat softened toward evening. The anchor hummed sustained through stone and relay and Lyra on a Thornwald road cursing weather with vocabulary that suddenly felt slightly less necessary because the weather was being scheduled now. Damien in an academy classroom tomorrow forgetting his next sentence for 1 second because the room's field had shifted toward honesty. Gareth in a chair by a map he could still read without climbing stairs. Aldric in the barony study rubbing his left wrist where old injury ached less. Seraphine in the chancellor's office signing orders with hand studying the way it stilled when she decided. The world not saved. Defended. Worth living. Worth protecting. This was it beginning. Morning August 23rd, Lyra departed for Thornwald with calibration kit and commission seal and instructions to insult committees accurately when committees deserved it. Damien departed for the academy with curriculum crates and a dedication page still blank. Kael stood at the tomb approach watching carriages take different roads toward the same work. Seraphine joined him, travel coat, document stack, half-inch proximity obsolete. She said, September deployments. He said, yes. She said, and October. He said, yes. She said, after that, we'll see. He said, good answer. Wind in archive corridors. Lamp low in offices where clerks copied field health indices. 10 years to convergence. 10 years of building. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. A strategist's rebirth arriving not as Transcendence drama, but as young adults taking commissions and historians publishing honest pages and calendars living in law and fathers crying without embarrassment and mentors saying hold the map from chairs that did not require stairs. Enough for August 23rd, year 19. Enough for a long while. Building continued. Resonance sustained. The world worth protecting had begun to protect itself in voices that were not his. That was the victory Ethan Cole had never planned and Kael Ashford had spent 15 years earning. Not labeled. Sufficient. Summer year 19 arrived the way frontier summers always arrived in the northern quarter, not all at once, but in increments of heat that made stone walls remember winter and forget it again by afternoon. Kael was in the tomb archive when the flicker came. He felt it before any relay bird could carry language for it. A thin wrongness at Ironmark's northern seam, the place where Valdris maps ended in honest pencil and exterior pressure had historically found the grammar of almost. Not invasion. Not yet. Not the convergence the court calendars marked 9 years and some months ahead. A test pulse, the kind of pressure a damaged field received when something vast and patient brushed the world's edge to see whether the old seams still opened. His hand stopped on a margin note about maritime calibration tolerances. The sovereign core answered without drama. Warmth. Presence. Reference frequency offered through earth and stone, and the lattice of fields the coalition had spent 5 years learning to name without simplifying. He closed the ledger. Seraphine was in Valdris, Chancellor's morning roster, 3 disputes on the docket, a demon autonomy verification packet that required her signature before noon because Veth scholars did not believe in decorative deadlines. He sent 1 relay line through the tomb's priority channel, the kind that cost credibility if used for panic, northern seam flicker. Anchor responding. No battle. Reports when shaped. Then he sat in the central chamber and listened at scale. That was anchor work. That was the cost no one had put in wedding toasts. Ironmark's northern watch felt it first as weather that lied. Sergeant Marin Voss, no relation, though Ironmark joked about it anyway, stood on the ridge line at second bell and watched heat shimmer above gray stone that had been stable since the coalition secured the tomb. Her course studied the way course studied when good wind arrived without wind. Then, for 6 breaths, steadiness frayed, not breaking, not hemorrhaging, just thin, as if the air had forgotten what thickness meant. She did not shout technique names. She did not draw steel. She wrote in the watch log, 6:14, field thinness, duration brief, no visual distortion, cores unsettled then steady. By 6:22 her core had settled again. By 6:30 the thinness was memory and suspicion. She added, recommend relay to court field health desk. Not emergency. Not nothing. Kael offered alignment the way he had on the night of Transcendence, not overwhelm, not command. Invitation. The northern seam's damaged, complicated field received reference frequency and, slowly, the way a tuning fork's note settles a string that wants to match, but retains its wood, began to resonate toward coherence. The exterior pressure that had brushed the seam found no opening of the old kind, no amputation point, no Valdorath-era weakness dressed in modern politics, no place where uniform force could slide through diversity and call it peace. The flicker lasted 3 hours and 11 minutes by Thessa's later measurement. It did not escalate. It did not become battle. It subsided the way a hand withdrawn from a door leaves the door still closed. Kael remained in the chamber throughout. He drank water once. He did not dramatize the listening. When the thin wrongness eased, his shoulders dropped 1 fraction before his mind filed subsided. Thess arrived from the medical annex at hour 2 with field charts and the expression of a woman who had long since stopped being surprised by unprecedented and had replaced surprise with documentation discipline. She said, I can measure the echo. I cannot measure what you did without putting poetry in the chart. He said, Don't put poetry in the chart. She said, a one-word summary then. He said, alignment. She wrote it down. The coalition's fear arrived faster than its understanding. Relay traffic between Ironmark and Valdris thickened before noon, Harn's adjutant demanding clarification, Thornwald's lightning core asking whether spring calibration should shift to wartime footing, Soulhaven maritime desks worrying about northern echoes affecting sea seams, Heratha's desert relays cautious in the way southern kingdoms were always cautious about northern trouble that might become everyone's trouble. Seraphine held the Chancellor's office the way she held everything that threatened to become panic, with ledgers, schedules, and sentences too precise for rumor to survive contact. She read Kael's priority line once. She did not interrupt the morning roster. She added a 15-minute block at second bell, field health, northern seam, factual briefing only. When the block came, Kael's fuller relay was already on her desk, timestamps, duration, no casualties, no distortion logged at watch level, anchor response active, exterior pressure characteristic per Mar appendix classification. She had made the court memorize the classification 2 years prior for exactly this kind of afternoon. Harn's proxy sat with arms crossed until the third sentence. Then the arms uncrossed, not trust, relief's cousin. Lady Stormwind's daughter asked one question about Thornwald corridor coupling. Kael's reply arrived before the meeting ended, coupling stable. Flicker localized northern seam. Your core does not need to deploy. The room's temperature changed without the windows opening. Seraphine said, the court records today's event as first post-Transcendence exterior pressure test. Anchor response verified. Institutions continue. Calendar unchanged. She did not say we won. She said, next hearing Thursday. By evening the fright had burned down to relief with appetite. Valdris taverns always exaggerated, but even exaggeration had tone, and the tone tonight was still here rather than already lost. Ironmark's watch logs copied to court archives. Demon Peace faction scholars in tomb lower galleries requested measurement access, thus granted with conditions. Academy relay students in Bright's reform track received a teaching packet Damien would deliver next week. Honest history of flickers, not heroic myth. Gareth's reply came at dusk. Good. Map held. 2 words more than February. Kael read them at the tomb desk where he and Seraphine had argued about bulletin phrasing 5 months ago. He filed useful. She wrote in after midnight, not 2-day urgency this time, 1-day determination. Travel coat dusted with summer road dryness. Left hand court documents, right hand empty. Expression settled 2 seconds before the rest of her face completed the journey from gate fatigue to assessment. He was in the archive office. The resonance hum in the chamber below was steady, sustained, not spike. She said, 3 hours. He said, 3 hours and 11 minutes. She said, thus sent the chart. He said, thus sends everything. She set the documents on the desk, not thrown, placed, and looked at him the way she looked at field reports that required the body to confirm what the ink claimed. He looked tired in the specific way anchor work produced tiredness, not sleep dead alone, but the fatigue of listening at distances that made relay birds seem slow. She said, the coalition was frightened. He said, yes. She said, now they're relieved. He said, yes. She said, and in 9 years something larger arrives. He said, yes. Silence held, not empty, full of maps and calendars and the northern seam's measurement lines. She said, what do we tell them? He said, the truth. The anchor works. The work continues. She said, Harn will call it proof. He said, Harn will call it proof of Ironmark's importance. Let him. The seam held. She stepped half an inch closer, marriage grammar, proximity tolerance obsolete, partnership visible in function without label. She said, you felt it alone. Not accusation. Fact. He said, anchor felt it. I was there. Her hand found the desk edge, stilled, decided. She said, next time I want the priority channel before the second bell. He said, yes. She said, and Kael. He waited. She said, that's what the 10 years are for. He looked at her, gray eyes in lamplight, chancellor and wife, and the person who had chosen the same damaged world before vows made it legal. He said, yes. Not poetry. Accuracy. They updated the master ledger together after she made tea. Neither of them would call ritual, but both would miss if absent. July 17th, year 19. Northern Seam exterior pressure flicker. Duration 3 hours 11 minutes. No battle. No casualties. Watch logs clean. Anchor alignment response verified. Coalition briefed. Fear brief. Relief functional. First post-Transcendence test passed. Convergence calendar unchanged. 9 years remain. Work continues. She added in the margin. Chancellor note. Priority channel protocol amended. Next flicker. Full court factual block within 1 hour. He did not argue. Outside, summer night settled over Gareth's old capital layers. Scholar wagons quiet. Archive corridors breathing. Demon galleries low-lit. The world damaged and diverse and complicated and still defended. The exterior had brushed the door. The door had held. Not saved. Defended. Enough for July 17th, year 19. Morning would bring calibrations. Morning would bring hearings. The 10 years were not a countdown to doom. They were a calendar for work, shared seams and institutions and honest history and frontier gardens and maps held by hands that had learned frequency required holding. Kael closed the ledger. Seraphine was already drafting the public bulletin. He joined her at the sentence that required accuracy over victory. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. Resonance sustained. Spring year 20 came to Ashford barony without announcement, the way spring always came to frontier places that could not afford ceremony. Mud first, then green. Then the particular gold of weak sun on fields that had survived another winter by stubborn arithmetic. Kael had not slept in his boyhood room in 4 years. Seraphine had never slept in it at all. They arrived by ordinary carriage, not royal escort, not chancellor's procession. 2 travelers with 1 trunk and a relay satchel. Seraphine could not leave behind any more than she could leave her left hand. Aldric met them at the barony road's last bend on foot, which told Kael everything about his father's health and happiness before they spoke. Aldric's stride was still careful in the left knee. Aldric's smile was not. He embraced his son with the full-body honesty frontier barons used when they had cried at weddings and would cry again at lesser occasions without apologizing. He embraced Seraphine second, not chancellor first, not crest politics, not Valdris law. Family grammar. The barony's lady by marriage, welcomed by a man who had planted a garden for a dead wife and raised a son who had become something maps struggled to name. She accepted the embrace without performance. Kael filed the moment in the place where maps changed without changing the record. The market square had seen better decades and also better recent years. Stalls that had been half empty in Kael's 8th-year memory now held grain, cloth, ironware traded down from Valdris routes opened by coalition charter. A Cooper Kael remembered as permanently angry was permanently less angry. Children ran between booths with the unearned velocity of people who had not yet learned which roads ended in war. Seraphine walked the square without chancellor's mantle, frontier wool coat, hair pinned simply, the woman who had married a baron's son and helped build a world's grammar, examining apple prices with the devastating attention she gave treaty clauses. An old woman selling honey recognized Kael before he recognized her. She said, taller. Still biting your nails on the left. He said, still honey, Mistress Corin. She looked at Seraphine. She said, you married the quiet one. Good. The loud ones cause trouble. Seraphine said, I've noticed. The old woman laughed. Kael almost smiled. Fields beyond the village showed spring work, plow lines straight enough to satisfy a strategist, imperfect enough to satisfy a farmer. Men and women who had not asked to live adjacent to continental politics continued the older politics of frost dates and seed depth. A boy with a wooden practice sword too heavy for his arms reminded Kael of a mirror he had stopped looking into because the reflection had become composite. Ethan and Kael, and anchor and advisor and husband, all one body now. 24 years old and still shaped by the soil. Aldric walked them along the eastern ridge path where the barony's 12,000 acres rolled toward forest smear and northern gray stone. He talked about drainage repairs. He talked about Brenna's eastern quarter relay station needing a new roof. He did not ask what Transcendence felt like. He said, The garden's alive. 3 words carrying more weight than a sermon. The garden sat behind the manor house where his mother had planted it. Modest plot, herb borders gone slightly wild. Early spring bulbs pushing through soil that had been fed and turned and spoken to by a man who loved without conditions and did not understand aura but understood tending. Roses his mother had chosen, frontier hardy varieties, not Valdris court breeds, had survived drought, war's indirect hunger, and 4 years of Aldric's imperfect but relentless care. Seraphine knelt by the rosemary without asking permission. She touched the leaves the way she touched documents she intended to respect. Aldric watched with the vulnerable directness that had always been his political handicap and his moral anchor. He said, "She would have liked you." Seraphine said, "I would have liked her." Not performance. Simple. True. Kael stood at the garden gate and felt the composite life settle, the 8-year-old at the window, gray-green dawn, the car's headlights in another world's glass, the strategist who died empty, the baron who lived because his son had refused to die at 16. He did not dramatize the wait. Wait settled the way wait always settled when he had no time for poetry, soil under fingernails, rosemary scent, his father's breathing beside him. The boyhood room was smaller than memory claimed. Low timber ceiling. Ink stains on the battered desk older than the desk itself. Shelf with ledgers and a frontier farmer's almanac. Wooden chest. Broken toy soldier his mother had given him before fever took her, still in the chest, still broken, still kept. Seraphine stood in the doorway while he entered alone. Not because she was excluded. Because some rooms required one body at a time. He looked at his hands on the desk, larger now, nails still bitten on the left, scars from years that had not been frontier childhood. 8 years old at this window. 24 now. The barony outside unchanged in outline, changed in fact, market fuller, fields worked, garden alive, father older and present. He had wanted this once, not fame, not throne, not empire. His father deserved ordinary supper and crying at weddings and a garden that survived. The world his mother had planted in soil and in a child who had died in one life and refused to die in another. He heard Seraphine in the hall speaking quietly with Aldric about bread ration schedules, chancellor instinct, wife instinct, same instinct. He did not call her in. He let the room be Kael's for 10 minutes. Then he closed the chest. Then he joined them for supper. Evening supper was frontier ordinary, stew, hard bread, wine Aldric pretended was better than it was. Brenna arrived from the eastern quarter with reports about relay roof estimates and a hug for Kael that smelled of wood smoke and administrative confidence. No court titles at the table. No convergence arithmetic unless Seraphine's satchel interrupted, and it did not interrupt because she had decided it would not. Aldric cried once, quietly, satisfied, when Brenna described the village school's new roof paid by barony surplus Kael's early ledgers had made possible. Seraphine passed the bread without comment. Kael ate and listened and felt peace, not as prize, as work's residue. The long labor of barony, then kingdom, then world's grammar, arriving at a table where a frontier baron could feed his son and daughter-in-law without fear. After supper, Aldric showed Seraphine the drainage maps he had drawn himself, honest lines, no crest polish. She corrected one slope calculation. He accepted without wounded pride. Kael watched them and thought, this is what we defended. Not uniformity. Not simplification. A damaged, diverse world where a villainess could correct a baron's drainage arithmetic, and both could mean it kindly. Night settled over Ashford with the particular cold that found the gap between collar and jaw before the body finished waking to spring. Kael and Seraphine slept in the guest room Aldric had prepared, larger than the boyhood room, still frontier modest. Through the window, ridge gray stone, village light sparse, eastern forest dark smear. She said into the dark, your father waters the roses on your mother's birthday. He said, I know. She said, he didn't tell you. He said, he didn't need to. Silence. Her hand found his, not vow stagecraft, not crisis catch. Marriage. He said, thank you for coming without procession. She said, thank you for bringing me as wife. The words sat between them without melodrama. Wife. Chancellor. Advisor's partner. Same person. Sufficient. Morning brought market again, Seraphine buying honey from Mistress Corin with coin from her own purse, not barony accounts. Kael walked fields with Aldric one last hour before carriage departure. Brenna presented a list of Eastern Quarter needs ranked by honest priority. He signed barony approval for the school roof without chancellor authority, because here he was son and heir and baron adjacent, not world's anchor. At the road's last bend, Aldric embraced them both again. He said to Seraphine, "Come back when the roads allow." He said to Kael, "I'm well." The same 2 words Kael had sent after Transcendence. Aldric did not need poetry to understand what his son had become. Kael said, "I know." The carriage rolled toward Valdris and Gareth and court calendars and 9 years of shared work. He looked back once. Aldric stood in the garden gate. Roses hardy against frontier wind. Mother's plot alive. Father present. The barony ordinary and defended. Kael turned forward. Seraphine's hand rested on the relay satchel, habit, function, partnership visible without label. Spring continued behind them. Work continued ahead. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. Enough for Ashford year 20. They did not return to Valdris immediately. The carriage stopped one night at a relay house on the thorn-walled border, stone walls, decent soup, a room with a desk scarred by decades of travelers who had carried urgency in their sleeves. Outside, spring rain found the roof with the patient persistence of weather that had no opinion about Convergence calendars. Kael spread field health bulletins. Seraphine spread court schedules. They worked until second bell, partnership visible in function, marriage visible in the way she edited his 3rd sentence without asking, and he accepted 2 of 4 changes without argument. Then the papers closed. Then the room became only room. He had said after that, "We'll see in the tomb on the night of Transcendence." She had said, "Good answer." 5 months of hearings and northern flicker and coalition fright burned down to relief had not made the answer less honest. If anything, the honesty had sharpened, the way tools sharpened when used daily. Seraphine built the fire though the night was mild. Not because they needed heat. Because some evenings required a center. She sat in the chair by the hearth, not chancellor posture, slightly less controlled, the private uncertainty she never showed Valdris. He sat across with tea she had made plain, strong, no court ceremony. Rain on stone. Fire settling. Relay house quiet. She said, "You never answered." He looked up. She said, "Not the calendar answer. The other one. After Convergence, what do you want?" Silence held the way their silences always held, full, not empty. 2 people who had learned to use conversation to avoid certain things now choosing not to avoid. He could have deflected with strategy. He could have filed the question under premature. He did not. He looked at the fire the way he had looked at the window in his boyhood room, cataloging exits, before realizing there was no exit required from this question, only honesty. He said, "I want this." She waited. He said, "Not victory. Not a clean ending. Not the empire Valdorath wanted. Not a world simplified so the exterior has nowhere to push." He gestured small motion, not speech theater, at the relay house walls, the rain, the papers on the desk, the life they had built from nothing twice. He said, "Damaged world. Diverse world. Complicated world. You, not safe behind crust walls, not reduced to weapon here. Aldric in his garden. Gareth by his map. Lyra cursing committees. Damien teaching honest history. Kael governing without shrinking. Veth verifying autonomy. Institutions that hold when frightened. Fields that get planted. Markets that sell honey. Boys with wooden swords too heavy for their arms." He paused. The fire popped. He said, "I want to keep building that with you. Whatever arrives in 9 years, we meet it from inside a life worth defending. Not from inside a sacrifice I'd already decided was inevitable." His voice did not break. His hands found the teacup edge. Emotion broke through the way emotion broke through in him, briefly, precisely, at a moment he could not redirect without dishonesty. She did not cry. She did not reach across in cinematic grace. She stilled, the particular stillness of her hands when she decided something, eyes settling 2 seconds before the rest of her face followed. She said, "I made that choice 2 years before vows." The room changed temperature without the fire shifting. He said, Seraphine. She said, April year 16. Reform Council vote on Sovereign's Court permanent roster. You thought I stayed for institutional leverage. He said, I thought you stayed for the work. She said, I stayed for the work. I stayed because the work was the world I wanted. I stayed because you were building that world without asking me to be smaller inside it. Rain intensified, spring insistence, frontier memory. She said, I did not marry you to survive politics. I married you because I had already chosen the same damaged life. Vows made visible what was already true. He looked at her. Gray eyes in firelight. Not villainess. Not chancellor. Not weapon. Partner. He said, I know. Soft. Not performance. She said, do you? He said, I'm learning. The honesty cost him something visible, not weakness, the opposite. The cost of a man who had trained himself not to feel in public paying feeling in private because the person across the fire had earned it across hundreds of chapters he had lived and she had lived and neither would dramatize. She said, after Convergence, we'll see. Echo of his tomb answer. Not surrender. Shared grammar. He said, yes. She said, good answer. The ghost of February 3rd year 19 sat between them, anchor rising, reports pending, 10-year calendar acknowledged. Now 9 years. Now choice named. They did not rush to fill silence after. The fire burned down. Rain eased. She reorganized the document stack on the desk. Habit, function, love expressed as order restored. He said, you should have told me. She said, you should have asked. He almost smiled. The almost was visible, one corner of his mouth considering movement. Discipline then permitted. She saw it. She did not comment. Some victories were private. He said, when I died the first time. He stopped. Corrected. When Ethan Cole died, there was nothing that was truly his. Apartment. Job. Strategies for other people's wars. A novel half-read on a Thursday night. Wet silence. No tunnel. No chorus. She listened without interrupting, the rare gift of a person who understood that interruption would make him retreat. Her hands rested on her knees, still, decided. The fire painted her profile in amber that did not flatter and did not need to. He said, this life has the barony. The garden. The court. The anchor. People who stayed. You. He did not say I love you in 3 words because 3 words would have been too small for what he meant and too large for his voice to carry without melodrama. He said, I want to keep choosing this. Every day. Including the days when exterior pressure brushes the seam and the coalition frightens and the work is mud and relay traffic and arguments about bulletin phrasing. She said, so do I. 2 words. Sufficient. Near midnight, relay house footfalls passed in the hall. Travelers who did not know Chancellor and Anchor sat in an ordinary room, naming the shape of their future without prophecy. Boots paused, resumed. The world continued its ordinary traffic, merchants, couriers, a Thornwald officer swearing at a broken will spoke, and none of it required their intervention. Kael thought of the tomb on Transcendence night, stone bench, thin cushioned Thess had declared unacceptable color, her shoulder half an inch from his while calendars waited. The relay house hearth was smaller. The choice was the same. Seraphine said, we should sleep. Carriage at dawn. He said, yes. She said, Kael. He said, yes. She said, the strategist died empty. Not cruel. Accurate. He said, yes. She said, he was given a second life. He said, yes. She said, he built a barony. Then a kingdom's stability. Then a world's grammar. He said, we built. Correction gentle. Partnership. She accepted it, slight nod, almost smile mirroring his almost smile from earlier. 2 people terrible at performance and excellent at function. She said, after that, we'll see. He said, together. Not question. Statement. She said, together. Dawn came gray-green through the relay house window, the color of Ashford mornings, of places that had not decided whether to be spring. They gathered papers. They drank tea. They did not touch hands at the carriage step, public adjacent space. Habit caution obsolete, but body memory persistent. Half inch between their shoulders when they sat across from each other in the carriage. Half-inch enough. The road toward Valdris waited. Court waited. 9 years waited not as doom, as work shared. Love not performed. Lived. In bulletin arguments and fireside sentences and choices made 2 years before vows and named on a rainy night when the world was damaged and diverse and complicated and worth protecting. Kael looked out at frontier hills rolling past. He did not dramatize gratitude. Gratitude settled the way resonance settled, sustained hum, not spike. Seraphine read relay traffic. He watched her hands still on the page when she decided a response. Filed useful. Kept choosing. Enough for the road home. December year 19 closed the way institutions closed when they were real, not with a single bell, but with final signatures, archived dockets, and the exhausted satisfaction of people who had held structures together through another rotation of seasons without pretending seasons were gentle. The Sovereign's Court completed its first full operational year on the winter solstice, though Seraphine would tell anyone who asked, and several people who did not ask, that institutions measured years by hearings held, not by candles on calendars. She kept the ledger herself. Not because clerks were incompetent. Because the Chancellor's personal ledger was where truth lived when public bulletins required compression. The entries filled 2 volumes now. Judicial roster confirmations, held. First Interkingdom Maritime Seam Dispute, resolved without shooting. Demon Autonomy Verification Audits, completed with objections filed and answered. Academy Inspection Tours, Bright's Reform Track passing honest history standards thus, had helped write. Frontier Reconstruction Fund allocations, distributed with Brenna's Eastern Quarter roof on Ashford's priority list, because Seraphine believed love expressed in function included school roofs. Convergence preparation hearings, 37 sessions, 0 calendar slippage. Ironmark Northern Watch rotation funded through year 22, without Harn pretending discomfort. Thornwald Corridor coupling audits, passed with 1 insult about pen quality. Solhaven Maritime Calibration, 3 disputes resolved, 0 shooting incidents. Northern Seam Flicker response, documented, coalition briefed, fear brief, relief functional. Field health indices, trending toward coherence without uniformity. She wrote the solstice line in steady hand. Year 19 operational complete. Institutions held. Not because history is kind. Because people chose maintenance when maintenance was unglamorous. Kael read over her shoulder from the doorway. He said, "Poetic for you." She said, "Accurate for me." He did not argue. Kaelin's public address came 3 days before solstice, Valdris Square, Reform Council steps, winter cold finding callers with democratic precision. No unity sermon. No empire metaphor. The king who could share stage without shrinking stood with notes he had written himself and spoke sentences short enough for Harn to tolerate and long enough for Damien to quote in academy lectures. He said, "Peace is not a prize we won and put on a shelf." Wind moved banners, coalition colors muted, scholar wagons parked near the archive annex, ordinary citizens who had learned to attend court addresses the way frontier people attended weather, with attention and without illusions. He said, "Peace is work. Daily. Boring. Expensive. Easily lost when we confuse relief with completion." He did not name the northern flicker. Everyone in the square had heard anyway. He said, "The court held this year because clerks held. Because soldiers on watch wrote honest logs. Because demon scholars verified autonomy without surrendering dignity. Because a frontier barony sent grain when prices spiked. Because people who disagreed stayed in the room." He said, "The exterior is not invited. It will come anyway in time. We meet it by being worth defending now." No applause cue. Applause came anyway, not roaring, grounded. Seraphine stood stage left, chancellor, not performer. Kael stood stage rear, advisor, anchor, not symbol. Gareth sat in the front row because stairs were enemy and he would not pretend otherwise, gruff, alive, map folded in inner pocket because maps were how he prayed. Aldric had not traveled, winter roads, barony needs, but Brenna's relay summary arrived before the speech ended, barony listening via Eastern Station. Baron cried. Not apologizing. Kael filed useful. January year 20 opened the court's second operational year with Veth's permanent Concordat observer seat signed in the same chamber where maritime seams had almost become shooting incidents 2 years prior. The Demon Peace faction's representative signed with human language fluency and left autonomy verification copy on the desk as habit rather than threat. Harn signed for Ironmark with expressions suggesting he was enduring ceremony the way he endured useful weather. Lady Stormwind's daughter signed for Thornwald with a written insult about pen quality appended as marginal note filed, not escalated. Commander Bright signed for Silverlight reformed gray coat, honest stitching, no order shadow. Guildmaster Torrin signed with ledger-ready eyes. Seraphine signed last, Chancellor's authority, not performance. Kael witnessed, advisor's function, Anchor's presence felt as steadiness in Corps gold-ranked and better, not overwhelm. Gold-ranked clerks later described the steadiness as good wind because clerks did not say resonance in signing chambers. Thus would correct them in footnotes. The quill scratch of 6 kingdoms and 1 Demon Peace faction took 11 minutes. No one spoke technique names. No one announced power levels. Institutions did their quiet work. Veth said after signatures, 300 years since observer seats meant anything true. This one will be tested. Seraphine said, everything true is tested. Veth's expression shifted, not smile, acknowledgement. He said, the Southern Node sends field health copies quarterly. I will send them honestly. She said, I will read them honestly. Enough. Bright Academy's first honest history graduating class stood in the Reform Courtyard on January 14th year 20. Spring not yet arrived, but air less cruel. Students in coats patched with frontier practicality and Valdris scholarship pride. Damien spoke without notes, earnest, kind. Tragedy of exploited goodness replaced by earned authority. He said, you are the first class taught that the Empire lied without being taught to hate learning itself. He said, you will go to courts and baronies and guild halls and demon archives, and you will be resisted by people who prefer comfortable myths. He said, tell truth with documentation. Truth without documentation is rumor. Rumor loses to fear. Lyra stood rear left, Thornwald blue, hair braided for ceremony again, arms crossed in affectionate impatience. She had insulted 3 committees accurately on the ride-in. Kael had found it restorative. The graduates received certificates thus had helped design field measurement standards on the back because honest history included honest science. One graduate, Eastern Frontier origin, barony adjacent name Kael recognized without comment, asked afterward, when Convergence comes, do we fight? Kael said, you hold the grammar we built. Fighting may not be the first verb. The graduate said, what's the first? He said, understanding. Seraphine watched from the colonnade, Chancellor assessment, wife stillness, pride not performed because pride performed was crest politics and she had left that grammar years ago. Gareth found Kael after the ceremony in a side corridor where maps could be unfolded without audience. The old strategist's hands were steadier on paper than on stairs. He said, court year held. Kael said, yes. Gareth said, map held. Kael said, frequency held. Gareth grunted, approval dialect. He said, less poetry. Kael said, yes. Gareth folded the map. He said, stay by it. Kael said, yes. 2 men who had never declared loyalty in sentiment, declaring it in verbs. That evening Seraphine read the ledger aloud in the Chancellor's office, not for Kael's ignorance, for shared accounting. Winter lamplight on ink. Valdris noise muted by stone walls. The same desk where they had argued bulletin phrasing in February and July, accuracy over victory, 14 minutes once because the northern seam required precision and pride did not. Institutions held. Kaelin governed honestly. Veth observed honestly. Bright graduates educated honestly. Northern seam tested honestly. Anchor responded honestly. 9 years remained on the Convergence calendar, not doom digits, work digits. Kael stood at the window watching Valdris winter dark settle over streets that had seen reform and war and reform again without becoming simple. She said, first full year complete. He said, yes. She said, we argued about bulletin phrasing 11 minutes in February. He said, 14 in July. She almost smiled. He saw it. Filed useful. She said, Year 20 opens. Court sits. He said, Anchor listens. She said, Chancellor schedules. He said, Together. She said, Together. Outside, relay birds departed for Ironmark and Thornwald and Hareth and Soulhaven and Demon Southern Node and Ashford Barony with summaries honest enough to survive contact with fear. Inside, the ledger closed on year 19, not ending, completing. The Sovereign's Court had not saved the world. It had given the world one more layer of grammar, disputes heard, autonomy verified, history taught without comfortable lies, peace described as labor not trophy. The long work continued. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. Year 20 open. Court sitting. Enough for January's close and the spring that would follow. April year 20 found the Ashford Ridge at dawn wearing light the way the barony had always worn it, gray-green becoming gold, cold finding the gap between collar and jaw before the body finished waking. Hills rolling toward forest smear and northern stone with the patience of geography that did not care about human calendars, but held human lives anyway. Kael stood where he had stood at 8 years old. Not the manor window. The ridge path. 12,000 acres below, market square stirring, fields plowed, eastern quarter smoke rising, garden behind the manor invisible from here but present in memory the way anchor presence was present, sustained, not spike. Seraphine stood beside him. Half-inch closer than early marriage grammar. Half-inch enough to be choice, not accident. Frontier wool coat. Hair loose in spring wind. Chancellor's satchel left in the carriage because some mornings required only mourning. 9 years remained on the Convergence calendar. The number sat in court documents and tomb archives and demon scholarly reviews without crushing them, work shared, not doom counted. The northern seam flicker of last summer had come and subsided. Institutions had held through year 19's close. Year 20 had opened with signatures and honest graduates and a king who said peace was labor. The exterior had not been invited. It would come anyway in time. They would meet it from inside a life worth defending. That was not optimism. That was architecture. Below, the world continued in vignettes too large for one ridge to hold, but small enough for anchor listening to feel, not invasion of privacy, connection, lattice doing what Valdorath had wanted without amputation. Gareth and Valdris with a map unfolded on a table he could reach without climbing stairs, gruff, alive, pins replaced by frequency lines, saying hold the map in replies that grew 2 words when usefulness required. Old strategist hands steady on paper. Loyalty never declared in sentiment. Staying. Lyra on a Thornwald road deploying lightning core calibration teams for spring corridor work, loud where Kael was quiet, honest where he was strategic, cursing weather with vocabulary slightly less necessary since resonance had shifted, but still satisfying. Committee insults accurate. Warmth immediate. Readers' access to the version of Kael that existed when he was not performing, mirrored in her, because someone had to be. Damien in Bright Academy courtyard teaching the second honest history class, earnest, kind, tragedy of exploited goodness fully replaced by earned authority. Students taking notes that included documentation standards on certificate backs. Truth without documentation is rumor. He forgot his next sentence once when field shifted toward honesty, then continued, then taught. Aldric in the garden his wife had planted rosemary, hardy roses, soil turned on birthdays without announcement. Frontier Baron crying at lesser occasions without apologizing. Left knee careful. Smile not. Watering can in both hands. Love without conditions. Trust without understanding what his son had become, because love did not require understanding to be true. Kael and Valdris Reform Council Chamber reviewing Maritime Fund allocations, king who shared stage without shrinking, peace described as work not prize, governing without empire metaphor. Notes in his own hand. Harn's objections filed and answered. Ordinary monarchy doing ordinary monarchy honestly, because ordinary had been the ambition all along. Veth at the Southern Demon Node signing quarterly field health copies, autonomy verified, observer seat permanent, human language fluency flawless, 300 years of skepticism carried without letting skepticism become sabotage. Honest sends. Honest reads. Southern heat very different from Ashford dawn cold. Same grammar. Thus measuring something in two medical annex with professional irritation at unprecedented becoming routine. Brenna ordering eastern quarter roof tiles. Harn enduring useful weather. Torrens guilt corridors humming commerce shielded and coupled. The world damaged, diverse, complicated, wrought not burned out, easier to locate by contrast. Not saved. Defended. Kael breathed frontier dawn air with smoke, turned soil, distant market sounds. Seraphine said, you're listening. Not accusation. Fact. He said, anchor listens. She said, take the morning off. He almost smiled. The almost had become easier since the relay house fire, one corner of mouth permitted, filed, not dramatized. He said, I am off. She said, good. Wind moved ridge grass. Below, a boy with a wooden practice sword too heavy for his arms crossed the market edge toward fields. Kael watched without nostalgia poison recognition. Himself at 8. Ethan Cole half-read novel on a Thursday. Strategist who died empty. Baron who lived because desperation had been replaced by understanding. All one body now. 24 years old. Second life. She said, do you remember the ceiling? He knew which ceiling. Low timber. Furred cold in stone walls. Gray-green light. Mother's garden not yet memory. Father's tread on stairs. He said, yes. She said, you were 8. He said, I was 2 people. She said, you are 1 now. He did not correct her. The correction would have been poetry. He said, yes. They walked the ridge path without carriage escort. Aldric had given them breakfast and privacy with frontier directness. Go to the ridge. I'll water the roses. The manor shrank behind them. The forest smear darkened eastward. Northern gray stone marked Kingdom's unofficial edge, the seam where exterior pressure had flickered last summer and found no opening of the old kind. Kael felt the resonance hum, sustained, quiet, reference frequency offered to a world that could match if it chose. He did not force. He understood. That was transcendence. That was the whole story in one verb if someone demanded compression. She said, 10 years ago you wanted survival. He said, yes. She said, 5 years ago you wanted institutions. He said, yes. She said, last year you became anchor. He said, yes. She said, this morning. He looked at the barony, ordinary, defended, garden alive, father present, market selling honey, school roof paid, boys with wooden swords. He looked at her, gray eyes in spring wind, chancellor and wife and partner who had chosen the same damaged life 2 years before vows. He said, this morning I want the same thing. She said, good answer. Echo of tomb. Echo of relay house. Echo becoming grammar. They stood until the sun cleared the eastern hills and the gray-green light turned gold. No thunder. No light column. No technique names. Ordinary dawn on a frontier ridge where a strategist had been reborn as a baron's son and had built barony then kingdom then world's coherence without simplifying the world. The Convergence waited 9 years ahead, not depicted as war on this morning, not ignored as fantasy. Work. Calibrations. Hearings. Honest history. Observer seats. Northern seams and southern nodes and maritime tolerances and arguments about bulletin phrasing lasting 11 or 14 minutes depending on month. Love not performed. Lived. In garden watering and fireside sentences and half-inch between shoulders on carriage seats and ledgers closed on solstice nights. When they walked back toward the manor, Aldric was in the garden gate. Roses hardy against wind. He did not ask what they had discussed on the ridge. He said, soup at noon. Seraphine said, we'll be there. Kael paused at the garden edge. Rosemary scent. Soil under fingernails memory. Mother's plot alive. He had died once with nothing that was truly his: apartment, job, strategies for other people's wars, novel half-read, silence wet and final. He had been given a second life in a world he knew only from fiction and had learned to know truly by choosing, consistently, every day, to understand rather than force. He had built the barony, drainage maps, market routes, school roofs, Eastern Quarter relays. He had built the Alliance, Coalition Charter, Reform Council, Right King on Throne. He had built the world's grammar, Sovereign's Court, Demon Autonomy Verified, Academy Honest, Anchor Resonance offering alignment without overwhelm. The strategist died empty. The Baron lived full. The advisor served. The anchor listened. The husband chose. The world was not saved. It was defended. And the long peace, not peace as prize, peace as daily labor, began here, in April year 20, with soup at noon and a garden that survived and 2 people walking down a ridge path without performance. Carrying 9 years of shared work ahead like a relay satchel neither would set down because function was love and love was function, and both were sufficient. Kael Ashford did not dramatize the ending. Endings did not require drama when they had been earned. He took Seraphine's hand 1 second longer than ridge privacy strictly required. She let him. Her fingers did not tighten. Did not pull away. 1 second. Filed where maps changed without changing the record. They walked home. The work continued. Same hands. Less red. More blue in the field. Enough. For a long while. For the long peace. For the life they had chosen together before the world had language for what they were building. Dawn behind them. Soup ahead. Roses alive. Resonance sustained.